Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online 2 episode review. This one's going to be for episode 14, A Small Step, the last episode of the Phantom Bullet arc. Tomorrow's Sword Art Online video is going to be my kind of review overview of the complete Phantom Bullet arc, but for now let's focus on the last episode. Overall, I really like this as a final episode of this arc. I thought it really hit on all the points that it needed to kind of wrap this up effectively. It had the same format that kind of the whole season has had. It's only a couple of longer scenes, but I felt in this episode they really captured all of those scenes really well. So the main ones were obviously that okay, you resolve the issue of our kind of villain for this arc, Death Gun, and we get the full explanation for that with Kyoji, his brother, and then also Johnny Black. So we have another Laughing Coffin member still out there who's obviously going to strike next. So I like that setup for like, okay, we've solved this arc and kind of got rid of kind of these two kind of enemies out of the way, but there's still one kind of left. There's still something that lingers on from Sword Art Online that is going to continue going forward. And then the other important thing was that to resolve effectively Asuda's character arc, see how she is going to deal with basically her past. Because Kirito's basically dealt with his issues here, confronting Death Gun and realizing the extent of what went on and kind of accepting that he did forget about them on purpose, but in the end kind of remembering them and realizing how important it is to kind of remember it even though it's bad. And with Asuda Sinon, we have the other side of that situation where she can't forget. She wants to forget so badly, but just can't because it was such a big moment in her past. So yeah, let's get into this scene by scene. First opening scene is the complete resolution for basically the conflict, continuing on from last episode. We get the physical struggle between Kazuto and Kyoji, and basically, after Kirito's knee to the face on Kyoji, Kyoji kind of overpowers him in this kind of crazed state, and you get the idea that Kirito is probably a little weak after a pretty lengthy dive, playing the bullet tournaments and a mad dash over to her apartment. So he overpowers Kirito and injects him with the drug that he's using to obviously kill the other players. And what I like while this is going on is that Asuda is kind of dealing with the fact of like, okay, he's kind of overpowering Kirito here. What do I do? What do I do? Am I strong here? Am I weak? What? But then she makes the decision that she has to protect him. That is kind of her goal here, that she has to protect him because of everything he did to protect her. And again, she's doing it without even realizing the extent, but like the whole idea of, like you do these things even if they're bad, even just to protect the people around you. And I like this here. She comes in and just completely knocks him out by smashing him over the head with a stereo. And that's the end of the kind of conflict. That's the villains taken out of the picture. It's nothing crazy dramatic like the Death Gun Kirito fight from last episode. It's just this girl hit this guy over the head with stereo and knocked him out. And then in terms of Kirito, we think he's dying basically for this whole scene. But it's this kind of interesting explanation of like, oh, that's very convenient, but it also fits perfectly because the whole idea of this arc was that Kirito is not really at risk himself. Like, this is the first arc really where he's not like, he himself is not at risk. And that being the thing that saved him, I thought was very fitting in terms of like, the whole idea of why Kirito wasn't targeted in the first place was because Death Gun never knew his address. And he had the protection of being in the hospital and not diving from his home and stuff like that. And here, keeping the electrode on his chest was the thing that saved him, which I quite liked. And that just is the way they kind of resolved the whole thing. And you get a little bit of that kind of back and forth banter between the two in real life that they had in SAO as Kirito and Sinon, and you can sort of see that around him she can kind of be herself. She is that kind of sassy Sinon character that we all know and love so much. But the next scene I think is probably one of the most important and probably one of my favorite from the entire arc, and that is kind of this bookmark scene that they play with the previous scene where she's confronted by the bullies. This was the scene where we basically got the first look at how afraid she is of guns, this kind of phobia she has of them, and what it does to her when she sees even someone go like that. And you get the reference from the main bully, Endo, that, you know, my brother has model guns, I'm going to bring them over here next time if nothing else works. And that's what happens here. And you know, this is where I'll bring in a few things. Just this idea that Asada has created these kind of barriers, these defenses against other people because she feels so vulnerable in real life. The kind of scarf thing that she puts over her mouth, the kind of protect her mouth kind of thing, and then the glasses that she wears. They're not actually like vision correction glasses. The novelization establishes that what this is just it's frames with just pieces of bulletproof glass in them. They don't do anything to her vision. They're just purely there because having this bulletproof glass makes her feel somewhat safe, and it's this kind of crutch that she kind of has to get over some of her fears. And I like that when Endo pulls out the gun, you get the moment that's happened a few times already, where you cut to the kind of panic attack about to happen. You see the blood starting to flow quicker and stuff like that. You think she's about to have a panic attack, but then she kind of realizes that no, I'm stronger than this. You know, given what I just went through, this is nothing. And so calms down. She kind of pulls down the muffler, takes off the glasses, and just deals with the bullies in the most, I think, effective way possible. Because what I like here is that the bullies have been using the fact that they knew about her past against her, using basically the fact that they know that she's afraid of guns in any capacity against her. And this was the one that showed the most like disregard for like gun safety. Even though it's just a model gun, the fact that she's pointing it at Sinon and not showing any like care about gun safety or anything like that. And for Sinon, having been through so much because of an incident with a gun that she did to protect people, she has gone as far as to kind of research this stuff in game, outside of the game, and knows like gun safety and practices it because she knows how deadly and dangerous it can be. So just stuff like her knowing the safety is on, basically lecturing the bully like, no, you're not meant to point this at people, and knowing how to disarm someone, you know, like grab the wrist, you know, and pull the gun out and just stuff like that, and then carefully measuring the shot and just aiming it at a can to kind of demonstrate her skill with a gun. I thought it was this really perfect scene to just get across that she's never going to be like completely like 100% A-okay with guns, but that for the most part it's over and she can accept that it's this kind of skill that she has, and there's this kind of affinity with guns that she's always going to have because of her past, but she's kind of developed from there. And this scares the bullies enough to kind of scare them off that, oh, she's not afraid of guns anymore. She's kind of an expert with them. I don't want to mess with her because she knows what she's talking about when it comes to guns. So I thought that was a really cool scene, seeing her deal with the bullies. The other thing about the scene I liked was that I don't know if this is me just getting this idea into my head and then thinking that it really happened in the show, but I almost got this sense that the voice actress, there was a clear distinction between the voice of Sinon and the voice of Asada. It's the same voice actress, but doing a slightly different kind of style for each one to show the confidence of Sinon and the kind of vulnerability of Asada. But what I like here is that I really felt like we got the Sinon voice coming through with Asada this time. That she, for the first time ever, she's confident. You got that kind of sassy tone of voice coming out a little bit, which I very much appreciated. The next scene is probably the least interesting one, but there are definitely some interesting things that they cover in it. It's just kind of like they recap the whole, basically everything that just happened. They established that Death Gun is Kyoji's brother, that the plan had more than like two people involved. It was Kyoji, his brother, and this guy Johnny Black, who Kirito recognizes as another leading member of Laughing Coffin who wasn't caught, whereas the two brothers were. They established that they've kind of been sent to kind of mental hospitals, basically, because they've kind of lost touch with reality. And I like this kind of retroactive idea that that's what's happened with them. That the whole arc of Sword Art Online has kind of been that who you are in the game does have some reflection on who you are in real life, and that the virtual world isn't just a game. It can be this really amazing thing for a lot of people. It can literally be this other world where you can experience all this other stuff as if it were real life. But with Kyoji and his brother, they kind of go down the dark side of this, and they start to hint at this, that these are two people who lost track of reality and basically made the video game world their main reality. And it was like they were diving back into the real world rather than diving into the game as being the kind of different thing. And, it brings up the whole idea that with Kyoji, the whole reason this whole thing started was because he was mad at Zexy because he gave him bad advice on stats, that he believed this guy, and then he was so into the game that he felt like it kind of ruined his life because his life was the game. And that's really interesting, and it retroactively gives you a different perspective on a lot of the scenes where Kyoji and Asuda are talking outside of the game, because they talk about the game, and Kyoji's always going on about how no, my AGI characters can't do this or can't do that. That's all he ever really talks about with her, and you can see how obsessed he is with it. And I kind of like that really subtle kind of hint that he is kind of resentful of all this stuff, and you can see where it comes from. And the whole idea that they have to make the death gun a reality, they had to do something big, and so they had to do the bullet tournaments. And this is the first time Kyoji was actually doing the job in person, where he was going to be the one to kill the person in real life. And they go more in depth on the whole idea of reality and stuff like that. And you get with Sinon her issue of dealing with, is she strong in real life, or is Sinon just a strong one? Kirito talks about the same, and how SAO, he's different now than from SAO, but it's still part of him. And the same with Kikuoka is nice, because I like that it was the two of them there giving the report, because they did team up in the end to take this whole thing down. And I also do appreciate like the fact that Asuda was showing that she cares somewhat about Kyoji, asking about like his mental health, where he is, wanting to go visit him to kind of get the final words to him and stuff like that. But definitely the last scene of this episode, the whole second half of the episode, is basically devoted to this. It's Asuda comes out of school, and Kirito basically brings her to the Dicey Cafe, where obviously Eagle has his shop, and we see Rika, Lisbeth, and Asuna there. And you think it's going to be this kind of party type thing that they did at the end of the fairy dance arc, and they kind of do it that way, in that they straight away establish that she's going to be part of the group from here on out. The girls want to be friends with her. Kirito definitely wants to integrate her into this group, and stuff like that. So I appreciate that. But then they kind of go, there's another reason we brought you here, and that is that I can't just let you go knowing that you're going to kind of beat yourself up constantly over this. I know how you feel, and I'm sorry to say this, but I told these two, we went to your hometown, and there's someone you have to meet. And as this is happening, as they're revealing this stuff to her, she is panicking really hardcore. She's freaking out. She's angry about this. She thought she's left this past behind and is trying to move on. But then when the person they bring out, you don't know who it is at the start. It's just this woman and her child. And then you start to get the connections when they mention that the child is 4 years old, because that's the same time gap as between when the incident in Asuda's past happened. And so she explains that she was the cashier at the post office that day, and she was pregnant. And Asuda basically doing what she did in the post office that day saved this woman, saved her child, allowed her child to be born, and allowed this kind of mother-daughter relationship to actually exist. And it's a really interesting scene because it's just this random character who appears like for in one scene, and you just think, oh, she's just there to be part of the post office scene, but then she comes back and is essential in our main character's kind of growth from here on out. And it's interesting because throughout the whole thing, you can see how young the child is. She's 4 years old. Her mother has clearly told her to be like nice and respectful to Asada because, and has told her somewhat about what happened. You know, like she saved you when you were young. The reason you're here is because of her. She's someone that we have to be very thankful towards. And she drew you get the scene with the drawing and stuff like that, and it really makes it it's a very emotional scene, and it really affects Asada. And I like that they take time to get across that, you know, build up to it, and then kind of Kirito comes in at the end. It's like it's the people you protected. You protected these people, and you don't have to carry this around with you for so long. Yes, never forget about it, but you don't have to constantly like have it be directly a part of you, always kind of influencing you. It's time to kind of move on. You have new friends now, and you now know that it was more than just what you did. You saved so many people with what you did. And ending it with just her kind of crying these kind of tears of happiness, kind of knowing that what she did, it wasn't just this negative thing that she killed someone, and it affected her life in such a way that she allowed two people's lives to exist because of what she did. It was a really powerful way to end the arc. And I'll talk more about my general thoughts on the arc tomorrow in my overall Phantom Bullet kind of arc review. But for now, that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the review and the episode, and I suppose the arc as well. So thanks for watching this video, and bye.